So we've just packed up camp at Julimar. Last night around the campfire we were all discussing tyres, so I think it was probably worth doing a bit of a video on tyres and tyre choices for off-roading. So when you buy a new car, they'll typically come with a highway terrain tyre. These are built more for on-road use. I mean, you'll get a little bit of off-road use with it, probably good in sand, but they're pretty terrible in mud. They're designed for fuel efficiency and low noise and a lot of grip on the road, but off-road they start to struggle. So when you look at a highway terrain tyre, it's got a really closed tread pattern. This is what makes it so quiet on the road, but it lacks things like stone ejectors and that sort of stuff between the tread blocks. I myself have got an all-terrain tyre. This is a fairly aggressive BFG KO2. These have been great for me. The things you'll notice here is they've got a far more aggressive tread pattern than a road tyre. They've got stone ejection points here, and the sidewall, the tread extends down the sidewall, so you've got a lot of traction when you let your tyres down. So I chose an all-terrain because as much as I'd like to spend a lot of my time off-road, I'm in the office as well. So I don't want a super noisy mud tyre on the highway, but I also need some extra traction because we do go pretty seriously off-road too. These are a good compromise. They're excellent in sand, excellent on rocks, good in light mud. These are actually a snow-rated tyre, these particular ones, so they're good in snow. But where they'll fall down is when you've got some really deep, sloppy mud and that sort of thing. That's when you need a far more aggressive, open pattern of the mud terrain tyre. So these have got excellent traction off-road, but they're a little bit noisier than the highway terrain, and you might notice a little bit of a drop in your fuel economy. So Alex runs a mud terrain because he's off-road a bit more than me. He's a bit more fortunate. These have got a far more aggressive lug and open tread pattern. You can see here it's got really aggressive side biting abilities and bigger stone ejectors. An issue with these on the road is that over time, with the aggressive grip of them, they do get chopped out, as you can see through here, and on the road they can become very, very noisy over time. When you get them brand new, they are obviously noisier than an all-terrain and a highway terrain, but it's not absolutely terrible. But after you've put sort of 20, 30,000 Ks on them, you'll certainly notice that extra noise. Not as good fuel economy, but you can't beat anything for traction in the mud when things get really sketchy out there. The mud terrain's your best friend. Handling on the road, the road manners of these tyres are not quite as good as the other two. They're certainly not as good as the highway terrain. And when driving in sand, these have a far more sturdy sidewall than most typical tyres, so you need to drop the pressures quite low to be able to get that bagging out effect to add traction in the sand. So there's a couple of types of construction of tyres. They're typically passenger rating and light truck rating. Most of your highway tyres will be a passenger rated tyre. These have got less plies in the sidewall. They're really good for noise on the highway, but when you get off-road they become susceptible to pretty bad punches. I think we're going to show some footage now of Steve, who you've seen on our trip, with his 200 series on his old vehicle that had highway terrain on the Holland track, and it doesn't look pretty. So it's fairly simple to tell if you've got a passenger or a light truck tyre. Typically on a passenger tyre you'll see a P or no marking in front of your tyre size. With a light truck you'll see the LT here, and that's the best way to tell if you've got a passenger or a light truck type tyre. So for any off-roading, I'd certainly recommend going with a light truck tyre. They're just an overall stronger tyre. You can carry higher loads over the axles. In an off-roading environment, you never really know entirely what you're going to come up against, and I think you're better off being well equipped with a light truck tyre. You can get some tyres that look identical. One might be slightly cheaper than the other. Just double check that it does have the light truck rating versus the passenger rating, because sometimes that's the difference. They look like the exact same tyre, but the proof is on the inside of the tyre that you can't see from the outside, and you want that extra sidewall protection and heavier duty of the light truck tyre. So last night we were talking about the pros and cons of going to a larger tyre size than your stock tyre. The benefits are certainly that you're going to get more clearance on your diff. So if you go from a 32 inch to a 33 inch tyre, you're going to get a ½ inch clearance on your diff that you wouldn't have had previously. The other benefit is that when you go on and do sand driving or any off-road driving where you need a larger footprint, you've got a bigger sidewall so that you can get a larger tread pattern on the ground, and that's more traction off-road. Some of the drawbacks are that when you do move to a larger tyre size, it's going to affect your speedo. It's going to go out of whack from what your factory standard was. Another drawback is you'll have a little bit of an increase in your fuel economy, but I personally think that the benefits far outweigh the cons. Another thing you need to be mindful of though is all your state legislation. as you lift your vehicle, your tyre increase in size does count towards the lift of your vehicle. I know in Western Australia you can only have a 50mm lift overall, so if you do a 2-inch lift on your suspension and then you move to a larger tyre size, you've technically gone over that 50mm overall lift. So that's something you need to keep in mind, and you need to check with your local state legislation to make sure you still comply. So I've had personal experience with moving to a larger tyre size before adjusting my suspension to compensate for the extra depth of the tyre. I've got some rub marks in here. What was happening is at full lock to the left, if I hit a bump, my tyre was touching the guard. So I had to correct that by getting my suspension lifted by about another 20mm. Now it rides really well. Some other drawbacks of going to a larger tyre that it puts some additional strain on like your CV joints and that sort of thing. I mean, the car was designed for a specific tyre size. If you go to a really aggressive upgrade, say you went from a 32-inch to a 35-inch tyre, you find the performance of your car really drops off, and you may need to consider some diff regearing. So that's Rhinohide's tips for tyre selection. These are quite broad. You do need to get into the nitty-gritty with your specific vehicle and your specific state laws, so do take your time when considering a tyre change. Thanks for watching. We've got plenty more videos. You can subscribe to our channel. We're going to be bringing out more content all the time. Cheers.